Designing a dahlia garden is more than just picking pretty colors, though I will admit I will pick pretty colors. That's part of the objective, but it's more than that. It's picking dahlias and setting up a garden that fits your space and fits your goals, fits into your overall gardening vibe. And dahlias are incredibly flexible, which makes them a great flower for lots of different gardens. You really can do a lot with just one kind of flower, and they mix well with others. In this video, I want to talk about how to think about gardening with dahlias at home, and I'm going to show you how I'm planning out my bed for this year. And springtime, which it is right now when I'm filming, is a perfect time to be thinking about what dahlias I have and where I might put them in the garden. Before I dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel for all things growing dahlias at home. I want to talk about what goes into growing dahlias, especially if you're new to growing dahlias at home. So dahlias, like any plant, wants to have three main things. They want sunlight, and good soil, and enough water. Dahlias are a full sun plant, so they want 6 to 8 hours of sun per day. And for soil, they really prefer rich, well-draining soil. And so what is well-draining soil? It's going to be soil that's not going to hold water for too long. And dahlias don't like to sit in wet soil. If you don't have good, rich soil, that's okay. You can build that up over time. You know, when we started our dahlia bed, it was just lawn. And so I had to take up the turf, and our soil was pretty poor, so I had to work in compost. Now, because we were creating the bed from scratch, and it was a really large bed, about 550 square feet or so, I brought in compost from a local source. Now that I have done that, I just continue to add compost, add that organic matter to the soil each year. And in that way, kind of doing that consistently, you're going to build up good soil over time. The third thing is water. Dahlias like consistent watering. I will tell you that consistent watering, at least for us, is not always easy. So my dahlias don't necessarily get consistent watering. We've had some pretty hot summers over the last couple of summers, and we've been in a drought. And so I'm really thinking hard about my water usage. I'm trying to conserve as much water as I can. So the dahlias don't get watered regularly. I think, like most plants, dahlias will still grow in the conditions that they're in. And so even though this past summer was really hot, we had a lot of stretches without rain, we were in a drought, it was probably my best season of growing dahlias. What that kind of taught me was that they can put up with a bit of stress. I know that they can handle a little bit more than what we might think. Before choosing the varieties of dahlias that you want to plant, think about why you're planting the dahlias. What's kind of your goal, other than the joy of gardening, of course. But do you want cut flowers? In that case, you may be looking for dahlias that specifically have long, strong stems. Or are you looking for particular colors? Is there a color palette that's maybe already established in your garden that you want to complement? Or maybe you're gardening in containers. You don't have a big amount of space. You want to be looking for dahlias that are more compact and are good for containers. So those are just some of the things to think about. I actually did a whole video on how I think through picking new dahlia varieties. I'll leave a link for that in the description. And when it gets to then planting out dahlias, there's a couple things that I try to think about. First is going to be the color. And how I want the colors to show up in my garden bed. So in my dahlia bed, I have not just the dahlias that I'm going to plant, but we have a few other things. We have an evergreen, we have a lilac, there are some roses, there's some peonies. Right now, the daffodils are coming up. So there's a lot of different things in the garden, and so I want to be thinking about what colors I want in which parts of the flower bed, and also timing. Where can I plant dahlias where I have other perennials that are going to be blooming at the same time? I want to plant some dahlias that are going to complement those colors in the late summer, fall time frame. Also want to think about heights. That's one of the great things about dahlias. You can pick from a lot of different colors. You can also pick from a lot of different sizes of plants. So, you know, upwards of 5, even 6 feet tall, or all the way down to some compact varieties that are maybe 1.5 feet or 2 feet tall. And I've been talking about dahlias and growing with other plants because I think dahlias are a great companion planter. So there are, planting with annuals that are flowering through the late summer and fall, planting them with perennials that are flowering at that time, being able to take up the flowering from other plants. So you get that kind of continuous flowering through your whole season. Dahlias really fit into that really nicely. Next, I'm going to show you what I want to do in my garden. I'm taking a low-tech, a fun, crafty low-tech approach to this. So I'm going to draw out the shape of the flower bed and use little hole punched colored pieces of paper to represent my dahlias and move them around the paper, try to figure out where I might want to have some of the different colors. To make it a little easier, a little bit more realistic, I did go out and do some measurements of the garden. So the garden it's about 50 feet long in total, and then so it's straight on one side and then it curves on the other side. All right, so I've got all my little colored hole punches punched out, and I'm also looking at my inventory of my dahlias so I can see colors and also kind of what heights that I'm looking at. And I tried to get pretty much one dot to represent one variety. I might have more than one of some of the varieties in terms of number of plants, but just to kind of keep things simple. Last year when I put out the dahlias, I tried to put the taller varieties I have in the middle of the bed, kind of running from top down towards the bottom. And that worked fine. Dahlias were great. It did mean that because the sun is coming from, on the paper here that we're looking at, the sun is coming from the left-hand side, left to right, later in the day. And so that meant that the plants on the right side, that long straight side, which runs along our driveway, were in a little bit more shade than I would have wanted. What I think I want to do this year is try something a little bit different. I want to take the taller dahlias that I have and try to cluster them in the upper part of the flower bed, so the top part of the page of the bed. And actually there's a natural slope, so it slopes from the top of the paper down towards the bottom of the paper. What I want to do is I want to see if I can get the taller dahlias towards the top, and then as you're walking down that natural slope, the height of the dahlias is also naturally getting smaller. Bottom 2/3 of the flower bed probably be dahlias that are in the 3 to 5 foot range. And then, I have some varieties that are much more compact, that are like, maybe 18 inches tall. And those I could pretty much put anywhere. I'll probably put them on the left-hand side of the bed. They'll be at the front, essentially, of the borders. I don't know how this is exactly going to look. Certainly, it's fun to move around the little pieces of paper, and it can kind of give me an idea of maybe where and how I might want to cluster some of the different colors that I have. It gives me the opportunity to kind of play around with some ideas. So actually I kind of like where this looks, at least as a kind of a first idea. So I'm gonna take some pictures of it so I can kind of look back on it later and think about it some more. Designing your garden with dahlias is about understanding your space, about working with the other plants that you might have, thinking about what it is you want to bring to the garden. I think there's going to be a dahlia for every scenario, every plan and every idea that you want in your garden. I think there's a dahlia that's probably going to fit that for you. And above all, enjoy the process and enjoy being out there with the flowers, with the bees and butterflies. That's going to be the reward for the work that goes into planning. And I don't even think that planning and designing the garden is work, honestly. It's a bit of fun with some colors and some paper. And then I'm gonna go out there and put them in the ground and see what happens. I know kind of no matter what happens, there's gonna be some pleasant surprises along the way. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found the video helpful. Hope maybe I gave you a bit of inspiration. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click that like icon, and I will see you in the next one.